Hi there, welcome back to the space and welcome back to the channel. So I wanted to do one, well, I don't know if it's gonna be one last video, but I wanted to do another video on my Flying V that I built. This is the BYOGuitar Flying V, and it looks fantastic. I don't know if you remember this guitar. I've done a few videos on it. Look at the figuring on that thing. So anyway, the guitar has always looked fantastic and sounded great, but I could not get it to intonate properly, and I was having nut issues. I ordered a replacement nut, and that's kind of where I think the trouble began. I had some other issues. I replaced the bridge. I had a few issues getting the Duesenberg to work properly, but the main problem is that I couldn't get it to intonate, and this string, the low E, kept hopping out of the nut, which has never happened to me before, and it was really annoying and freaked me out. So anyway, here's what happened. So since I last did a video before my camera broke and I had to wait for this new camera to get here, I started trying to figure out, it started with wanting to put 11s back on it. So I was sitting around at home playing it, and I was like, I want to hear the 11s back on there. And it was about time to change strings. I put a set of Ernie balls on that were older and they had a little rust on them, and I just liked the 11s with this guitar. So I began to take the strings off, and I just started looking at the nut again and realizing things just did not look right with the guitar. And while I'm messing around with it, I had barely super glued it on there, just a little in the middle. I was able to quickly release the nut. So then I was like, well, the nut's off. I've got a brand new nut. Let's rethink this nut and see if we can get to the bottom of this issue, because, I'm having problems. And it's really, I could tell I was right there, and it was almost like it's either going to get fixed or it's going to hang on the wall and just be a showpiece, which is just unacceptable for me. I had to get this thing to play because it sounds fantastic. I love the sound of the mahogany. I love the Flying V shape and build. It's a great guitar to have as a showman, to take on stage. I like to go crazy on stage, and I like to have unusual things for people to look at, and this is the perfect guitar for that. So, and it sounds incredible. Got the P94s in there that are humbucker side P90s. Love them. Okay, so everything was good with that, but like I said, intonation wouldn't happen, and this nut was just wonky, weird. All right, so I'd done a bunch of stuff, and I've documented on that, so you can see where I'd gotten before this latest change. Now, I take the strings off, the nut breaks off, and I realized, man, this is where my issues are. I'm jumping out of the E string. I'm not intonating properly, and when I file into the nut, it starts to intonate a little better. So I know that this is where my problems are. So I start looking at the guitar. I'm like really looking at it, and I noticed that before, when I put the nut on, it was crooked forward instead of the nut coming out of the neck. Coming out nice and straight across. It was kind of pulled down at an angle, and I couldn't understand why. And let me rewind a little bit and talk to you out there if you're thinking about buying a kit. At BYOGuitar, Pitbull, Solo, Fretwire, there's a ton of these companies, and almost all of them, I believe, have like a thing where they'll offer an upgraded nut. And usually you're gonna have to put it on. They just send it to you. They give you a good price on it, and they throw it in with the kit. And that's what I did. And remember that we're rewinding almost a year now, when I had very little experience. This is back in December that I ordered the guitar. And I've kind of gotten up to speed pretty quickly because I've been doing this so much and messing around with it. And this one having some problems, I think, helped my learning curve, helped me learn a few things that maybe it would have taken longer if I hadn't had so much trouble. A couple, but this has been like 3 builds in one because it's all the issues. So I started looking at it, and I suddenly realized after all this time that I think that there's some funky cuts here. I'm not quite sure, and I don't think it's going to read too well. But you can see how I have the nut glued right here, and it looks nice and straight. Now, if you turn it to the side, this side where I can see it, you'll see here, right here, the nut is straight now. But there's like this little gap here. It's like an angled gap. And I started realizing finally, after all this time, that whoever did the binding here, on this side, perfectly straight. Everything's fine there. But on this side, the binding, it looks like just the binding was cut kind of like at a downward angle. So instead of going straight across the fretboard, it's kind of going like this, right up here. And so when I was installing the nut, I was trying to line up with that binding because it looked like a straight line, and I was trying to get right on top of it so that my nut would be sitting straight on top of the fretboard, going straight out like it's supposed to. That wasn't happening because I was trying to line it up with this binding. So once I kind of realized that, when I had the nut off, I had my magnifying glasses on, I was like, oh, this just wasn't like perfectly straight. It's like a little funky up here. I did a tiny bit of sanding to remove any kind of materials here very carefully. Mess around and sand too much, you know, you're ruined. But just a little bit to make sure I got every adhesive out, and just to kind of flatten this space right here, because I think maybe the routing right here is just a little wonky on this neck angle, like something just a little off. I also think that these go out just a little too far. The rake angle's too wide. So I thought about putting on a retaining bar here, but I think I fixed it, and here we go. So once I realized that this thing was off, when I remounted it, I made sure to go straight back to the wood. And like I said, I did a couple back and forths with some sandpaper to get a real nice surface. I lost my finish right here, but now I could tell that the nut was gluing right into place the way it should. Looks a little weird because of this gap here, because the binding didn't go all the way to the top flush. It's kind of got like a little space. So once I got the nut glued into place and everything was right, I then strung up the guitar, and it did jump out, but after one little file, just a little bit of filing to get that groove down there and get it to drop in and get it to intonate down here, no longer jumping out of the nut. And so I'm going to demonstrate by just playing a couple riffs to show you that it no longer jumps out, and let you see and hear how good it sounds and how good it looks to play. Okay, so here we go. I'm coming direct, northeast power cable, northeast guitar cable. Okay, take two on the talk about playing. So what I want to do is just play you a little bit, just so you can hear the guitar again, and show you by playing something that's riff heavy on this low E that I believe I don't have to do a retainer bar or any kind of, like, you know, help up here as far as string tree goes, because I'm getting it to not jump out of the nut, and we're finally intonating, which is amazing. So I think I've come to the end of this journey with good results. So check it out and see what you think. Here, I'm going to play, I'll just play some chord stuff to get it, you know, just to remind you what the guitar sounds like. And then I'm going to play some kind of riffy stuff to show you that this E string will not jump out of the nut, which gives me confidence to go out, you know, and play it on stage in front of everyone. So here we go. So I think the guitar sounds fantastic. I think it looks fantastic. I've been reading a lot about wood, you know, because I want to know where the wood comes from, and I want to be conscientious. I don't want to buy things that are, you know, being ripped out of the forest and stuff in the wrong ways. And so, you know, I want to be aware of that kind of stuff. And I think there's a chance. I've been reading about this on the Tone Wood database, which is a fantastic site. Hold on. All right, so I think the guitar looks and sounds fantastic. I mean, the figuring on it, I was reading about it, and I think there's a chance that this guitar could be Cuban mahogany, which is not, you know, as rare or endangered as some of these woods become, which is nice to know. And the reason I think it is because it's the figuring is so dramatic on it. I don't know if I just got a lucky piece, but it just looks fantastic. And once again, this is the Wudtone stain that I used on it. It was the Cherry Flamenco, and it just turned out brilliant. I love it. So anyway, I think it looks great, and I think it sounds great. And as you can see, it is no longer jumping out of the nut, and I was playing it pretty aggressively. And I think if it was going to jump out, it would have jumped out on that. So I don't feel like I need a string retainer bar. It's now intonating, and I couldn't be happier. It was a long journey, but I want to offer encouragement to you if you've built a guitar like this, especially one of these more exotic shapes. I think these are trickier. That's, you know, I think that's why people usually do Strats and Tellies, because you have standard sizes, and as long as you know your nut width and your pocket depth and that kind of stuff, you're pretty good. With these kind of guitars, it's a lot trickier. You know, they're trying to do this wacky headstock business with these crazy rake angles. And I just think it's a lot more challenging to build one of these for cheap, you know, and sell it as a kit. And then I think it's a lot more challenging for the builder to pull one of these off as compared to like a Strat or Telly. So anyway, that's just my opinion. That's my thoughts. But I love the Flying V. I think this is a really good guitar, and I'm glad that I was able to learn. I'm glad that what happened for me, because the whole point of this was a learning exercise, and it's encouraged me to move on and build more guitars. So anyway, thanks again for watching. BYOG Flying V. Thanks again. I'll see you next time.